Welcome to Unit 4, Lesson 6, Causes of the Revolution, Paul Revere and the Shot Heard Round the World. The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. If you wanted to spread important news, you'd probably text it or put it out on social media for everyone to see. In 1775, spreading information wasn't that simple. Social media meant a man on a horse racing from town to town. The main idea for today's video is the British wanted to take control of military supplies in the colonies, but Paul Revere and others warned colonists of the coming attack. Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. After the First Continental Congress, militia units across the colonies began to step up their training and stockpile supplies. Remember, militias were not professional soldiers. They were groups of local men who organized to protect their town or colony. Companies of hand-picked, specially trained militia members called Minutemen were also assembled. The Minutemen were known for their ability to be ready to fight with practically no warning in a minute. General Thomas Gage, the British governor of Massachusetts, was ordered by the British government to take forceful action against the militias. In April of 1775, he learned that the Massachusetts militia was storing military supplies in the town of Concord. He decided to take the supplies and also to arrest Samuel Adams and John Hancock. Both men were staying in Lexington, on the road from Boston to Concord. Like Adams, Hancock was a leading figure in the protests against British laws and a member of the First Continental Congress. 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. Gage's plans were leaked, however. Paul Revere, a silversmith who had taken part in the Boston Tea Party, formed a plan to warn the Massachusetts militias. He arranged a signal, the Sons of Liberty in Charlestown, when the British soldiers left for Concord. He would use lanterns in the Old North Church steeple, which was visible from Charlestown. If the British troops left Boston by land, there would be one lantern in the steeple. If they left by water, there would be 2 lanterns. On the night of April 18, 1775, Revere learned that the British soldiers were preparing to cross the bay. He had a friend hang 2 lanterns in the steeple, and he rode to Charlestown in a small boat. There, the Sons of Liberty had a horse waiting for him, and he set off on his famous ride, stopping at houses and villages to warn the local militias that the British troops were coming.
Excuse me, kind sir, would you happen to know the direction of Lexington and Concord? Thank you, kind sir. Oh. Everybody knows the story of Paul Revere. The way the lantern was hung in the Old North Church. The way he rode to Lexington and Concord to warn the people. The British are coming! But what they don't tell you is the way the wind whipped through his hair, the feeling of his feet against the stirrups, the tug of the coarse, leathery reins in his hands, the way the dust rose behind him. They don't tell you about the chirping of the crickets or the sweet smell of the night spring air. Everybody knows the story of Paul Revere. But what they don't tell you is that Paul Revere never shouted, "The British are coming." I didn't? No. At the time, Americans still considered themselves British. Then what did I say? You said something more along the lines of, "The regulars are coming out." What's a regular? It's a soldier. It's still good. Whoa, slow down there. What now? This mission was conducted with absolute secrecy. There are soldiers all over Massachusetts. So what do I do? Go door to door? The regulars are coming out. Thanks, Paul. Gotta find my pants and put them on the line. God, I couldn't have picked up more convenient time. Paul Revere wasn't even the only one warning people that night. William Dawes and Samuel Prescott also rode across the countryside, spreading the message of warning. All right, is there anything more I need to know before I continue my famous ride? You're an amateur dentist? Really? You have 16 children. Criminy. And that's not your horse. What? You borrowed it from a merchant who won't be getting it back. What? Where does the horse go? Well, see, there's one last thing, and this one's the real kicker. Before the night is over, you will be arrested.
Don't worry, Paul. You'll be released before morning.
What? And that is the true story of the Midnight Ride. Wait! You didn't tell me who wins the war! Oh, the Americans do. Yes! And that is the true story of the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere.
Paul Revere was not the only rider that night. When he stopped in Lexington to tell Adams and Hancock that the troops were on their way, he was joined by William Dawes. A third rider, Dr. Samuel Prescott, caught up with Revere and Dawes farther down the road. Soon, a patrol of British soldiers stopped the riders. Dawes and Prescott escaped, but Revere was held and questioned by the soldiers. Prescott was able to complete the ride and alert the militia in Concord. When the British troops arrived, the Minutemen were ready. The shot heard round the world. In 1837, American poet Ralph Waldo Emerson referred to a bullet fired in Lexington, Massachusetts, as the shot heard round the world, in his poem Concord Hymn. Nobody knows who fired that shot, but it started a revolution that changed the world. The revolution begins. As the British Army marched toward Concord, they heard church bells and saw lights in windows. The colonists were awake and aware. Soon after sunrise on April 19th, the troops reached Lexington. There they met about 70 armed militiamen, nearly half of the town's adult males. But the Lexington militia was inexperienced and faced a much larger British force. The scene was chaos, as both the British commander and the militia leader called orders to their troops. The British officer, Major John Pitcairn, wanted to disarm the Americans, not engage in battle. But as the British advanced, a shot rang out. Then there were several more. Pitcairn tried to stop his troops, but the shooting continued for 20 minutes, leaving 8 Lexington men dead and 10 wounded. Only 1 British soldier was wounded and none were killed. The British reached Concord at about 8 o'clock in the morning. Using previously hidden military supplies, the Americans inflicted more casualties than the British did this time. The British soldiers attempted an orderly retreat back to Boston, but hundreds of militiamen fired at them from behind trees, walls, rocks, and buildings, and forced many British soldiers to panic. The British countered by sending advance parties to set fire to homes and kill residents along the way back to Boston. The fighting at Lexington and Concord is considered the first battle of the American Revolution. By the end of the day, British losses totaled 73 dead and 200 wounded or missing. The Americans counted 49 killed and at least 39 wounded or missing. Choosing sides. As tensions between Britain and the colonies turned into open violence, colonists took sides in the conflict. Those who called themselves patriots supported the right of the colonies to rule themselves. At first, not all patriots wanted to separate from Britain. Over time, however, those on the patriot side became convinced that independence was necessary. The Loyalists, colonists who supported Britain, and the king, increasingly found themselves an uncomfortable minority. As time went on, it became dangerous to sympathize with the British cause. Some Loyalists were beaten or saw their homes burned by fellow colonists. In 1775, a Loyalist who spoke openly about his opinions was ordered to leave Maryland by the Maryland Provincial Convention. Just a quick review before we end the video for today. British troops planned to raid an arsenal of weapons near Boston. Paul Revere and others warned the local militias. Fighting began at Lexington and Concord, which would be the opening battles of the American Revolution. The shot heard round the world. That's all for today's video.